In the world of commas today, we are going to look at the D/A rule, otherwise known as the dates/addresses rule. This rule should be something you are relatively familiar with, as this is one of the first things you learn about in terms of comma rules. But here are the rules as follows. We need to use a comma to separate the day of the week, the month, and the year when we have a date. So for example, on March 3rd, 1980, Miss MD was born. This is a true statement, so please remember that and bring gifts. But in all honesty, here we have the day of the week, or the date, the day, the 3rd, and here we have the year, and then we have the rest of the sentence. So I need a comma after the day, I need a comma after the year, and then I would go into the rest of my sentence. The one part where most people screw up, or a lot of students, is they don't put this comma after the year if the sentence continues. There needs to be a comma after the year if the sentence is going to continue going on. Some other parts to the rule are we separate names of a street, a city, and a state when we are writing an address. Or we would separate the last part of a geographical name, address, or date from the rest of a sentence. Let's take a look at an example. I live at 1234 School Road in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Well, here we have the address, and then we have the city. So we need to separate those two things, which many people often forget about as well. And hopefully you know at this point we need to separate a city and a state. So to separate the address, we put a comma after road, or the abbreviation for road. And to separate Eden Prairie, we put a comma after prairie and go on into Minnesota. Let's take a look at a couple other things about this rule. Zip codes are not separated by commas. So going back to this example, if I had put a zip code at the end of the sentence and it continued on, either way, even if it didn't continue on, I would not put a comma in between Minnesota and zip code. Commas are not needed in two instances: if the day comes before the month, or if only the month and the year are given. So we have no date, then we don't use commas. For example, President Bill Clinton took office on the 20th of January, 1993. In this case, much like we would do in MLA format, we do not use a comma. So think about it this way. If you're writing in MLA format, commas are not needed, which is not something we see very often. Another example, Hurricane Andrew hit southern Florida in August of 1992. And in this case, we have no date here. It doesn't say August 2nd, it doesn't say August 18th, so we don't need a comma in this case. So just keep in mind these two relatively rare for us instances in which we would not use a comma. Let's take a look at an example, see if we can figure out where the commas might go. Again, the video may pause, or you may have a quiz at this point in order to test your understanding of commas. Our sentence is, Aunt Virginia was born on June 15th, 1943 in France. So we are looking at, in this case, we don't have an address, we're looking at dates, and we need to determine where we would put commas. So we know we have the full date written as the month, the date, and the year. So we know we need commas in this case. So we need a comma after the date, so after the 15th in June, and then we have a year followed by the rest of the sentence. If this is the case, then we need a comma after 1943. So it would be Aunt Virginia was born on June 15th, comma, 1943, comma, in France. So keep in mind we're trying to separate that from the rest of the sentence. And that is your information on dates and addresses.